Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of Info 649 Library Programming. This week, we're going to talk about understanding your community needs and methods of how to do so. So, I just wanted to wrap up some of the conversation from last week in the discussions. In response to the scenario posed, I would like everyone to keep in mind that library work requires all of us to have some degree of flexibility, and I'll talk about what that means. Although we have policies, sometimes we have to be flexible within policies based on patron needs. If you're continuously having to make exceptions to a policy, then the policy should be reevaluated. Things that I would consider as it relates to the scenario that was discussed. Is the patron being disruptive, and what is their motivation for attending the program? Is the motivation positive or negative? We know that the motivation for attendance in the scenario is one of genuine interest in the program. If the individual becomes disruptive, they can always be asked to leave. I think if that were the case, the caretaker of the individual would be extremely understanding versus if a person is simply denied access at the beginning. Then, my second consideration, is there a viable alternative you can point the person to? If there's a viable alternative, I would redirect them there. If there is no viable alternative, I would allow them to attend the program. Many of you lean towards allowing the patron to attend with a similar line of reasoning. And those of you who thought it best not to permit attendance had very solid reasoning for that denial. There's no right or wrong answer, and the final decision should align with the culture of your library environment and the tone set by your administration, meaning how flexible would your administration allow you to be, and would they be in support of your final decision? So thank you, everyone, for the discourse. It was great to see that conversation. I'm also delighted to see that a broad range of programs were attended by everyone. There were story times, concerts, book clubs, and arts programming. And it's nice to see that there's a broad range of diversity and creativity in library programming. So just some housekeeping. I think I updated it everywhere. The interview project due date has been changed from the end of week 4 to the end of week 5. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit more time because I know it's a really heavy assignment. So it will be due Sunday, October 29th. And also week 5 will be the group discussion week, which you should already be aware of. Now that your guiding documents are in place, you're closer to designing library programs for the community that you serve. There's still work to be done before you begin the design process. You'll need to get a clear picture of your demographic composition of the community and their library-related needs. In order to get to know your community and its needs as per Rainier 2005, suggests collecting data about your community using the following methods. So you have local demographic information. Look up your community using the U.S. Census Bureau's American Fact Finder, and I have it linked in the written part of this document. You can learn a lot about racial, gender, economic, linguistic, etc. of the users in that way. There are also some libraries that use a tool called Orange Boy, and that also gives you census data for your community and surrounding communities. So it's best to figure out what your library has available for you. Patterns of commercialism. You can examine successful local businesses to discern patterns of commercialism and learn about local interests. I would suggest attending small business association meetings, visit local businesses, and create a relationship with both the staff that work there and the owners. Not only are they community members, but they're also interacting with community members that you might not see in your library. Collection of statistics. Circulation statistics can tell you a great deal about the kinds of educational, hobby, and other personal interests of your patrons. So familiarize yourself with how your organization gathers its circulation metrics and utilize that data for your own purposes. For example, if the highest circulating part of the collection is self-help or personal growth materials, how can you provide programming related to this subject content? In-house studies and surveys. Simple methods for collecting additional data about your users include questionnaires and focus group interviews, and we're going to talk about how to conduct those a little bit later. There are many other simple ways to get you to know your community. FASIC suggests that armed with statistical knowledge about the community, a librarian can make direct observations. Whether the librarian lives in the library's community or not, it is important to find ways to remain aware of what is happening in the community served. Reading the neighborhood weekly newspaper, watching local television news gives you insight into your community's interests. Telephone books and community directories list the number of types of schools, churches, recreational facilities, and community groups. As few hours spent driving and walking around the community and visiting local shop outlets will provide information about the type of housing prevalent in various areas and the range and price levels of goods in stores. The number, ages, and activities of children visible in the community can provide information about their interests and their needs. Systematic observation can be as valuable as formal data to learn more about a community. Also, talking with children, parents, teachers to find out where children spend their time outside of school, what issues concern the community, and what's new or changing is an important way to keep up with community needs. And that's 2005, page 8. If you utilize the methods above, you'll have a better understanding of the community you serve, specifically their educational, informational, leisure, and or social needs. Always be sure that you're gathering information directly from the community. They are the best source for identifying what they need and ways in which you can be of service to them as the library. Methods of community assessment related to library programming. So gathering information to learn about your community's wants and needs is called community assessment. Community assessment is the ongoing process that identifies the population served by the library and their socioeconomic characteristics, library and information needs, and patterns of library use. It also identifies stakeholders, those responsible for library funding and library oversight, as well as potential library customers. The information acquired through this process is used to improve library services and programs so that they can best support the community within the limitations of budget and resources. Simply put, it means targeting your services and resources in a manner that is directly linked to the needs of the community. Community assessment also helps to ensure that the goals and mission of the library are aligned with community needs and stakeholder expectations. And this is from Hiller, Shilley, and Self, 2004. Although few libraries perform formal community needs assessments, all libraries that offer programming, public, academic, school, and special libraries should do it every few years to enable matching programs with the patron needs. As Lynn, 2011, explained, performing a needs assessment is an essential element for determining what new initiatives and programs should be implemented and how the library's physical space should be repurposed or redesigned. The needs assessment process helps identify the needs, prioritizes them, provides structure for the program statement or planning document that includes specific recommendations, and finally assists in allocating resources. And that's on page 464. There are many different ways of learning from your community members about the kinds of programs that best fit their needs and interests. 4 of the most commonly used methods include surveys and questionnaires, asset inventory, community mapping, and focus groups. So let's talk about surveys and questionnaires. Surveys are relatively inexpensive and quick to design, distribute, and evaluate. And for these reasons, they have been very popular community assessment tools for decades. They yield quantitative data that is easy to analyze. On the other hand, it can be difficult to design questions that will elicit the right kinds of information without biasing answers. Another drawback is that surveys do not allow for probing of the respondents' answers to following interesting or unexpected themes. So you can't ask them follow-up questions to their responses based on a survey. Surveys can be administered in person, over the telephone, via mail, or online. It's important to consider the community's communication preferences and the technological connectivity of the population being served when deciding how to administer a survey. It's also important to pilot test a survey with a small group of people before administrating it to get the full community to ensure that the answers will result in useful information. Revisions are usually necessary after the survey instrument has been pilot tested, and if you can reuse a survey that has already been validated by another organization, it can save you time and work of having to devise your own survey, providing that pre-existing survey fits your community and your needs. Asset inventory. So an asset inventory is a technique for collecting information about a community through observation. It's similar to a shopkeeper taking stock of merchandise, but instead of cataloging products in a store, community members catalog assets in their community. It works best when conducted at a community meeting or gathering. And to conduct the inventory, small teams of participants walk around their community, observing people, places, and things they think are valuable. Team members then discuss their choices, create a list for the team, and share it with a larger group. And this is per Rotary International 2014. And there's a link to the PDF in the written document for these lecture notes. In relation to library programming, asset inventory is especially useful for identifying likely topics of community interest, as well as possible program collaborators within the community. For example, if asset inventory takers notice a bike shop in the neighborhood of the library, they might consider creating a series of bike safety classes. Or they might ask the shop owners if they'd like to collaborate on a library program to inform the public about nearby trails and suggested bike routes. The idea is to take advantage of local resources to strengthen the library's potential program offerings and enable the library users to take fuller advantage of the resources in their communities. Community mapping. Community mapping is used to reveal different people's perspectives about a community. It requires few resources and little time and can be adapted for people of virtually any age range or educational background. In this facilitated activity, individuals or groups of participants draw a map of their community and mark certain points of importance and how often they visit them. A facilitator leads a discussion among participants about the maps, while another facilitator records the discussion. Community mapping can be conducted at both informal community gatherings and meetings where community stakeholders are invited to participate. Community mapping is similar to asset inventory, but instead of enabling staff and volunteers to locate new businesses and other community members, it focuses on asking library users which parts of their community are most important to them. As with asset inventory, In terms of library programming, community mapping is especially useful for identifying likely topics of community interest, as well as possible program collaborators within the community. It can also be useful for identifying logical outreach locations. If, for example, many of the respondents identify the local grocery store or the local laundromat as places they frequent, the library might consider setting up library card drives, storytelling sessions, and other programs there to reach community members who don't usually go to their libraries and probably aren't fully aware of the range of library services available to them. Focus groups. A focus group is an interview in which one or two moderators interview a group of people at the same time, asking each person in the group the same questions. Usually there are about 6 to 10 respondents in each focus group, and the moderators usually run series of groups, stopping when no new information is being brought to light. The moderators work from a predetermined interview guide or a list of questions, and they are careful to allow each focus group to participate and answer all of the questions. The goal of the focus group technique is to determine people's thoughts and opinions on issues of interest, such as opinions on a new product and reactions to newly proposed law. Focus group organizers often handpick the participants. In the case of library programming, focus groups can be useful for learning about programming wishes from certain segments of the service population, so such as teens or seniors or library stakeholders directly, such as board members or corporate donors. Using focus groups, library programmers can determine the kinds of programs participants attend elsewhere, as well as the kind of library programs they have attended in the past and the kinds of programs they would like to see added for future offering. Focus groups can also be useful for thinking of new programs that donors might enjoy funding. And that's as per Robbins' 1996. And they offered the following tips for running a focus group in the library. Purpose and logic behind the use of this techniques. So it takes full advantage of the group process, gets information and ideas from an identified segment of the population, provides excellent public relations with the participant, the cost and time efficiency, can get information often unavailable from surveys or individual interviews. Types of situations for which this technique is used. It's useful to access the needs of groups traditionally underserved in the community or underrepresented in other types of data collection efforts. So the first group that comes to mind would be unhoused individuals. Some group respondents find the format a more comfortable way to express attitudes, perceptions, and opinions, and it can be used for needs assessment to target groups, evaluation of library, or pre-testing of media, messages, or programs. So, components of this technique: determine the role of the focus group study in the overall assessment or evaluation process. Determine the target group. Identify the pool of potential participants, select a facilitator, develop an interview guide, recruit the participants. According to this, 8 to 12 is best. Conduct interviews, and then prepare the report from the notes and the tape if you recorded. Supplies needed: a comfortable and quiet room, newsprint pads and easels, recording equipment if it's taped. Personnel needed: you need an interviewer, facilitator, you need a note taker for each focus group, and staff for recruiting the participants. Time factors: most time needed for recruitment and the confirmation of the participants. Then you need time for the actual focus group, usually 1.5 to 2.5 hours. And you need transcription of tape if you recorded it, which usually takes about 3 to 6 hours. Cost factors. It's could be essentially free to more than $500, depending on if the participants are paid, a professional facilitator is hired, or the room that you're using is rented. And that's all per Robbins, 1996, page 187. Keep these various methods of community assessment needs in mind as you all work on your final papers for this class. For larger programs, you might consider building some form of needs assessment in your program planning stage. I hope that all of this information is useful to everyone, and I look forward to seeing the conversations and the discussion that come up this week. Have a wonderful week. Thank you.